In the name of God, the compassionate, the merciful, welcome, friends, to Crime and Punishment, a legal podcast, not a political one, the official podcast of the Invictus Law Firm, PA, a criminal defense law firm here in Orlando, Florida. Website for which is augustusinvictus.com. We've got plenty of news, but first I want to look here. It says sound is good. Need info on intro music. That is in the description. You'll see the website, the LinkedIn, the Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. Please go subscribe to all of those. Also, at the bottom of the description, you will see audio. White Bat Audio, Poison Tooth, Strange Aeons. I even have the link for it in there. So check that out. Let's talk about the news. I'd like to talk about the most important things. First, as usual, hold on, let me get out of here, out of this window, because that's just slowing everything down. So today on social media, I said that in today's episode of Crime and Punishment, we discussed the coming Constitutional Convention, the sentencing of the J6 peaceful protesters, and the removal of prosecutors who refuse to enforce anti-abortion laws. So, working backwards, in sum, we've got a prosecutor here in Florida who refused or made a public statement about how he's going to refuse to enforce the anti-abortion laws here in Florida. Desantis suspended him. It's America's governor. And now the entire country is in an uproar about tyranny in Florida, hence the name of this program. J6 peaceful protesters, of course, in other outlets they are called rioters, terrorists, all the usual names. Guy Riffett was sentenced this past week, I believe, to over 7 years in prison. Talk about that. And then the coming Constitutional Convention. Interestingly, it's not the communists pushing for this. It's the conservatives, the MAGA conservatives, pushing for a Constitutional Convention, and they're about 15 states away from having it. What fresh hell would explode? Exciting times. Exciting times. If they actually pull it off and get a Constitutional Convention, my God. So we'll talk about that. But, like I said, I like talking about the most important news first. So we're going to talk about this Vox article. The U.S. monkeypox response is failing queer men. An expert explains how the community has learned to take care of itself when governments won't. I'm sure you'll recall that when this monkeypox phenomenon was coming out, all of the leftist rags were saying, yeah, it's possibly affecting gay men, it's coming out like that. But it's not a gay thing. That's a total conspiracy theory. And you know what? It's just defamation against the gay community. That's all it is. This isn't really a gay thing. It's disproportionately affecting gay men, and anything to the contrary, well, that's just homophobic. Fast forward to today, where you have Vox with this brilliant interview asking, so how do we talk about gay sex and this outbreak right now? What is an example of doing it wrong? What makes you so angry about the idea that gay sex is quote-unquote driving the monkeypox epidemic? To be honest, I don't even remember who they're interviewing. It's just so... Osmundson. Joseph Osmundson, a queer health advocate and clinical assistant professor of biology at New York University. Well, so clearly he's an expert. And thank God they're interviewing this expert, because this is his response. What makes you so angry about the idea that gay sex is driving the monkeypox epidemic? And he says, gay sex is a fact of life. Gay sex exists on planet Earth. You will never change that, whether you want to or not. Gay sex will always exist. Gay sex doesn't drive anything. It's like the sun in the sky or the tide going in and out. So when epidemics spread through gay sexual networks, we want to be very precise about that language. And also to be clear that sex is a normal and healthy behavior. Presumably by that he means gay sex. And our goal in biomedicine should be giving people all the tools that they need to make the best decisions and, in this case, have sex with the lowest risk possible. So, in other words, yes, it is gay sex that this is happening with, and yes, it is spreading through gay sexual networks, but first of all, we don't want to blame it on gay sex, and second of all, we still want gay sex to continue, obviously. Thank God for the experts. Thank God for fact checkers. Thank God that we now know that any right-wing talk or conservative talk or centrist talk or sane people talk on the left about how this is a gay sex thing, well, they're just conspiracy theorists who clearly hate homosexuals. I mean, it's obvious homophobia. So I wanted to start with that because that's the most important thing. We could talk about this Vox article about how to save democracy from the Supreme Court. And thankfully for this brilliant article, they brought a Harvard law professor on to talk about it. The evolution of the court and what Congress can do to make it more democratic. You might have heard the earlier episode of Crime and Punishment where we actually went through the Supreme Court opinion that overturned Roe v. Wade, in which Justice Alito specifically said, we are giving this back to the states to decide. We are giving this back to the people to vote on because we at the Supreme Court abrogated this authority wrongly back in 1973. We should never have done that. This should be up to a democratically elected legislature. This should be passed in the states or not, but the Supreme Court has no right to declare that this is a law and that you cannot pass laws concerning abortion in this country. That's the most democratic thing you could possibly do. However, because everybody's a Nazi that you hate and everybody on your side is the true Democrat, the people who are pro Roe v. Wade think, well, anything that would go against abortion is anti-democratic. And in fact, we've got articles here. I'm probably not going to read them, but we could. If you go to my Twitter, which is Emperor Invictus, you will see the article, I think I posted it yesterday, where 5 different lawsuits were filed here in Florida saying that the anti-abortion laws are a violation of their religious rights because their religion demands that they be pro-choice, pro-abortion. One filed by a Buddhist, one filed by a female. I'm pretty sure she's here in Orlando, as a matter of fact. These are the fruits of the Protestant Revolution. We can save that conversation for another day. But there are now lawsuits filed here in Florida, at least 5, last time I read the articles, saying that abortion is actually part of their religion, and outlawing abortion in the state of Florida is a violation of their religious rights. Absolute, stunning insanity. So, no. As a matter of fact, we're not going to read that Vox article. We've got better things to do with our lives. However, we will continue on the train of talking about abortion and this super interesting story about the Republicans trying to make a new constitutional convention. We'll save that for down the road because it's just so juicy. Let's see. We've got hashtag, what is it, Desantis destroying Florida, trending on Twitter. Concomitant with that, we have, quote, a very dangerous place to be pregnant in America is getting even scarier, end quote. Yeah, Desantis destroys Florida is the hashtag. This is about Texas, though. A very dangerous place to be pregnant in America is getting even scarier. And by that, they mean it's scary to be pregnant because you cannot kill your child at will, on demand, anymore. Especially, as they point out, in the western part of the state. Texas leads the U.S. in maternity ward closures, and nowhere is this more of an issue than in the western part of the state. when I first saw a prosecutor going ham, making public statements about how they're going to refuse to enforce anti-abortion laws, they're not going to prosecute anybody, it was actually in Texas. Now we have it going on in Florida. So, let's bring up this gem, CNN politics, which we're not talking about politics. We are just talking about the law. I want to remind everybody of that. Not talking about politics. We don't support Desantis. We don't oppose Desantis. Desantis, as a political figure, has no calculation in this program. We are only talking about the law. And this headline, unfortunately, in the politics section of CNN, says, DeSantis suspends Tampa prosecutor who took stance against criminalizing abortion providers. Which for CNN is actually a very neutral headline when you think about it. Let's see what's going on in here. See if this will play the audio. No. I'm not going to play an advertisement for you, CNN. No, so never mind on that video. Let's just read the article in. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis on Thursday, that's yesterday, suspended Tampa's elected prosecutor, Andrew Warren, for pledging not to use his office to go after people who seek and provide abortions or on doctors that provide gender-affirming care to transgender people. So again, what a neutral-sounding headline, right? DeSantis suspends Tampa prosecutor who took stance against criminalizing abortion providers. Super neutral for CNN. And then it goes right into, well, he's pledging not to use his office for people who seek or provide abortions, or doctors providing gender-affirming care to transgender people. How a sane person might write that in an opening paragraph is, this guy refused and openly made a public statement about it, grandstanding about how he's not going to prosecute doctors who cut off kids' genitals to make them into the other sex. He's not going to prosecute women when they murder their own babies, even if it's against the law, which, as a public official, an elected official, it is his job to enforce those laws. Somebody said to me, well, what's the big deal? He's an elected official, and that's what we're going to get into here. All of these leftists just up in arms about he's an elected official and the governor's a tyrant and yada, 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 yada. Yeah, he's an elected official, and his job is to enforce the laws. That's why we have state attorneys. And as a criminal defense attorney, obviously, I have my own contentious relationship with the state attorney. That's kind of our job. It's an adversarial system. But one thing's for sure, it's their job to enforce the law, right? Ethically, of course, you shouldn't be prosecuting innocent people, and we've had plenty of episodes talking about that. Prosecutorial ethics. They have discretion to not file charges against people who are innocent or against whom they cannot make a real case. They have discretion, yes, but they also have the obligation to drop charges when they know that the person did not commit the crime. Or even if they can't prove the crime beyond a reasonable doubt. You don't just put somebody on trial just for the heck of it, or because your people need trial experience, which happens more than you might think. Which, by the way, nerd note, you go to Thucydides' Peloponnesian War, there's a passage in there where he talks about how Athens just totally devastated this other city-state just so that they could get out and exercise their navy. Because that's the way of the world. Sometimes prosecutors will take people to trial because they need the trial experience, not because the person's guilty. Sometimes a military will lay waste to another state just because they need to exercise their military for, future military actions against the bigger state. That's human life, right? However, it is their job to enforce the law. So when you ask me what's the big deal about this, I would put it like this. Let's say a state attorney or district attorney, wherever you're from, here in Florida we call it the state attorney, or district attorney, the prosecutor for that county or circuit or whatever you've got in your home state. They said, you know what? we're not going to enforce the laws on carjacking anymore. Look, gas is out of control. People are going to be riding horses soon. Like, people can't afford their car payments, let alone the gas per month. And, everybody's having a rough time when it comes to cars and transportation. The buses are never on time. So we're just not going to prosecute carjacking. That would obviously be insane. That is so beyond the discretionary powers of the state attorney or district attorney that it's not even a question. If a prosecutor made this big ham show about, well, I'm not going to enforce these laws because look at the price of gas these days, and think about all the people without cars and the buses, this and that, you would think that guy has lost his mind. But let's make it something more political, like abortion, right? A lot of people think that the drug war is a waste of time. The entire Libertarian Party, if you ask me, is based on let's get rid of this drug war, right? It hasn't helped anybody. The cops have made a fortune on this. All it does is supply the government. The black market is out of control because of the drug war. If we brought it under control, maybe there wouldn't be so many deaths, so many overdoses, so many women prostituting themselves. Like, let's just get rid of the drug war. A lot of people say that. In good faith, they say it in public. They run for office based on that. Now, imagine that this state attorney in Hillsborough County had said, you know what? Not abortion, but I don't believe in the drug war. I don't believe that the government should be doing this to people. I don't believe we should have special forces or private military companies in, I don't know, Nicaragua and Colombia. I don't think we should have any of this going on. And you know what? Here in Hillsborough County, Florida, we're not going to enforce drug laws. Not possession, not trafficking, not intent to distribute. We're not enforcing any of it. This is a free haven for drugs. That would be insane. No one does that, right? You don't see prosecutors, even if they do disagree with the drug war, you don't see them going on TV making statements about, we're not going to enforce these drug laws because the drug laws are wrong. But abortion, now you get on TV and you say, well, we don't believe in these abortion laws and this is blah, blah, whatever they're going to say. So we're not going to enforce the anti-abortion laws here in Florida. So Desantis says, no, we have these laws because the people voted for them. It is your job to enforce them. And if you're going to make political grandstanding about how you're not going to enforce the laws, then you are suspended. That's common sense, right? To any sane person, that's common sense. Let's take it the other way, right? Let's think of something that, I don't know, that conservatives hate. Let's talk about hate speech. Hate crimes, right? What if we did that? What if we said, Florida has all these hate crimes things on the books, right? We don't believe that there is such a thing as a hate crime. We think all crimes are committed with malice. We think that these hate crimes enhancements are stupid. They're intolerable. They're political. Whatever you want to say about them. I'm the state attorney of Hillsborough County, and I don't believe in these hate crimes laws. So you know what? White guy jumps a black guy. I'm going to let him walk. I'm not going to prosecute him. Gang of white dudes beats up a black dude. I'm not going to prosecute him because we think these hate crimes laws are stupid, and we're just going to let them slide. What if they did that? And the Democratic governor suspended that state attorney. Obviously, the left would be on fire about it. Well, thank God. Common sense that you would suspend the state attorney for not enforcing the laws, for completely nullifying, acting like you have veto power over the legislature of Florida in your little fiefdom. Common sense. But when it comes to abortion, amazingly, DeSantis is a tyrant. And we haven't even passed the first paragraph. Let's continue. In his executive order, DeSantis accused Warren of neglect of duty and incompetence as the state attorney of Hillsborough County. Quote, to take a position that you have veto powers over the laws of the state is untenable, end quote, DeSantis said at a press conference in Tampa surrounded by law enforcement. Warren responded hours later, accusing DeSantis of, quote, trying to overthrow democracy here in Hillsborough County, end quote. So, here is how backwards this whole thing is. The people of Florida voted for DeSantis. The people of Florida voted for the legislature. The legislature enacts these anti-abortion laws that the people of Florida said they wanted, and all these laws against doctors who are cutting kids' genitals off and calling it gender-affirming care. All of this done democratically, right? And this guy in Hillsborough County says, nah, screw all those people. Here in Hillsborough County, they elected me, and I'm nullifying all of those laws around here. Obviously, if it were anything other than abortion, any sober person would see this and say, the fruits of this are pure anarchy. If every state attorney or district attorney, whatever you want to call them, every state attorney in the country decides, well, I'm not going to enforce these laws in my circuit, there would be pure chaos. Obviously. It's like living in a Kafkaesque nightmare. And not only that, he then tries to come back around and say, actually, DeSantis is trying to overthrow democracy here in Hillsborough County. Now, I am not a proponent of democracy. I don't have any political opinions whatsoever. It has nothing to do with whether I'm promoting democracy in Florida or in Hillsborough County or wherever. I don't even live in Hillsborough anymore. I live in Orange County, right? Nothing to do with me. I don't have any stake in this. I'm not in Hillsborough. I'm not promoting or opposing democracy. But the 1984 style doublespeak about how the governor is trying to overthrow democracy in Hillsborough County because he suspends someone who is actually trying to nullify the legislature and the governor is incredible. And what's even more incredible is all of these people all across the country going to war on this thing on the internet, acting like DeSantis is some out-of-control tyrant because he suspended a state attorney for refusing to do the job for which he was elected, by the way. Incredible, just amazing. What an opportunity to live in these days in which we live. At a previously planned news conference, during which he unveiled 2 suspects in a pair of 40-year-old cold case murders, Warren defiantly declared, quote, I'm still the duly elected state attorney of Hillsborough County, end quote. If the governor thinks he can do a better job, then he should run for state attorney or not president, Warren said, referencing reports that DeSantis is widely considered to be a contender for the GOP nomination in 2024. Whatever. Well, I'm not even going to comment on the GOP nomination or the race in 2020. Nothing. I don't care. The point is, the guy is saying, well, if DeSantis thinks he can do a better job as state attorney, he should run for state attorney. Ridiculous. What a ridiculous, disingenuous, garbage thing to say. Is that a red herring, a straw man? Pick your logical fallacy. He's making them all in this retort. Warren did not say if he intends to pursue legal action to void the suspension, nor is it clear what happens if he attempts to continue working as the state attorney. Earlier Thursday, that's yesterday, the website for the Office of the State Attorney, 13th Judicial Circuit of Florida, was placed in maintenance mode. By the evening, it was back online and featured DeSantis as appointee to replace Warren, Hillsborough County Circuit Court Judge Susan Lopez. Now, I don't know Warren or Lopez personally. I, again, have no stake in this matter, but hilarious that he's saying, well, I'm still the elected state attorney here in Hillsborough County. But then by that night, no, maintenance mode. We switched everything around. Now, Circuit Court Judge Susan Lopez is the new state attorney appointed by Desantis. The move by Desantis, a Republican, to remove a Democrat twice oh, God, I love this loaded language from CNN, right? The move by Desantis, a Republican, to remove a Democrat twice elected by Hillsborough voters drew an immediate and sharp rebuke from Democratic state lawmakers and officials. Minority Leader Senator Lauren Brooke said DeSantis was behaving more like a dictator than America's governor. And Agriculture Commissioner Nikki Fried, a Democratic candidate for governor, called Warren's suspension a politically motivated attack on a universally respected state attorney democratically elected to exercise prosecutorial discretion, which we talked about earlier. Yes, prosecutors do have discretion on what cases to bring. Prosecutors do not have discretion, however, to just completely overthrow democratically elected legislatures and decide these laws don't apply in my fiefdom. No. And if Fried is running for governor and thinks that that is a legal thing for a state attorney to do, that should be terrifying for all Florida voters. Ron DeSantis is a pathetic bully, Fried said. Wow. High-level political dialogue coming from Nikki Fried. What was the other thing I saw earlier? Oh, he has zero leadership capabilities whatsoever. Something, yeah. This Navy SEAL has zero leadership. And again, I don't support DeSantis. I'm not campaigning for him or anything. But the people that are literally calling him names, ad hominem attack, by the way, in formal logic, they are literally name calling this guy. And it's like, have you looked in a mirror? DeSantis said the decision to suspend Warren came after he directed staff to review whether any state attorneys in Florida had taken it upon themselves to determine which laws they like and will enforce, after watching prosecutors in other states decline to press charges for certain crimes. That review led them to Warren, who has become a vocal advocate for criminal justice reform and overturning wrongful convictions. Great! I love it. I love it. Overturn wrongful convictions. Phenomenal. Criminal justice reform, I've told people plenty of times, seeking my advice, my career advice on becoming a lawyer, on practicing law. I'm like, look, you can be a criminal defense lawyer and you can fight all these cases, and, it's a Sisyphean task and it's demoralizing. You do help a lot of people, but if you really want to get in there and fix things, become a prosecutor. Because prosecutors have discretion, and if you have control of those cases and you see this person is actually innocent, you can dismiss the case. And recently, God bless Black Lives Matter, recently some people have woken up to that fact. They have run for office for not the public defender's office, but the state attorney's office. They become district attorneys. They become the lead prosecutor in the county or the circuit or whatever. And then they make the changes. They enact criminal justice reform as the state attorney. That's the way to do it. And here in Orange County, it's being done. But to say, I'm just not going to enforce any of these laws because I don't like these, or because I'm a Democrat and abortion is blah, blah. What you can't. No, that's not actual prosecutorial discretion. That's not what prosecutorial discretion means, okay? Prosecutorial discretion is these people are innocent, or these people didn't actually break the law, or these people were set up, or we don't have the evidence to convict here, or whatever. But saying, I don't like this law, and I'm a political grandstander, and I'm not going to enforce this law to make a point, no. That's not the same thing. And the fact that Nikki Fried is running for governor and thinks that that is what prosecutorial discretion means, that's terrifying. The governor should not have had to come to Hillsborough County and clean up our mess, Former Tampa Police Chief Brian Dugan said during the press conference, that's really what it comes down to. Under Florida law, a governor can remove any county officer for malfeasance, misfeasance, neglect of duty, drunkenness, incompetence, permanent inability to perform official duties, or commission of a felony. The Florida Senate has the power to reinstate a suspended official or remove that person from office. It's not a dereliction of duty, Warren told CNN's Laura Coates Thursday evening. In fact, it's not even talking about things that I've done in the office. It is talking about things I may do in the future. I mean, this is out of like 1984 Orwellian thought police. Isn't that wild? They do this double speak. Like, oh, well, actually it's Desantis who's overthrowing democracy here and not vice versa when I'm doing it. It's actually him that's doing it. And I'm the democratically elected official and I can do what I want. And he's a tyrant. That doublespeak is right out of 1984, and yet they are the ones actually using that language. I mean, this is like out of like 1984 Orwellian thought police, he says. Incredible. What a time to be alive. Warren maintained he's always used his prosecutorial discretion to consider charges on a case-by-case basis. Desantis appointed Lopez, that's the new state attorney, to serve as state attorney during Warren's suspension. He previously appointed Lopez the circuit court judge in Hillsborough County. Desantis told reporters that he did not speak to Warren ahead of the announcement. Warren was first elected as state attorney in 2016, defeating a longtime Republican incumbent in a narrow race that predicted the bellwether Florida county's leftward turn. He was reelected in 2020, winning a higher percentage of the vote in Hillsborough County than President Joe Biden. During his first years in office, Warren kept a relatively low profile as he quietly modernized the office and adopted criminal justice reforms. Again, great. Good for you. In 2018, he endorsed the re-election campaign of the county's elected Republican sheriff, Chad Chronister, and often held press conferences with law enforcement. In turn, Chronister praised Warren in the months leading up to the Democrats' campaign for a second term. But Chronister hosted Thursday's press conference at the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office and delivered a biting critique of Warren while standing next to Desantis. Chronister's wife, Nicole DeBartolo, and father-in-law, Edward DeBartolo, a former NFL owner granted a presidential pardon by Donald Trump, have donated a combined $472,000 to DeSantis' re-election campaign. Why that's relevant, I have no idea, but CNN thinks it's relevant. Warren grew increasingly critical of DeSantis during the pandemic. Early in the coronavirus outbreak, he publicly bashed the governor's decision to allow megachurches to operate in Florida just days after the arrest of a Tampa pastor who defiantly held in-person service. Later that summer, Warren announced he wouldn't prosecute 67 people arrested in a protest following the death of George Floyd. Mostly peaceful protesters, I'm sure. So now his whole CV is coming out to speak for itself, right? DeSantis says churches can operate in Florida. We're not going to prosecute you. And he's up in arms about it, right? These people burn down America in quote-unquote protest, and he refuses to prosecute them. So he wants to prosecute the pastors, the church folk. He refuses to prosecute the 67 people arrested in the protest following the death of George Floyd. He was never suspended for those things. Is that a case-by-case basis? I think so. I think that's completely different. If there's a... riot's the wrong word. If there's a mostly peaceful protest and he decides there are 67 people, I don't want to charge him, right? I think that's actual prosecutorial discretion. Just like if the prosecutor in Seminole County had said, you know what, I'm looking at these, all this evidence, I'm hearing the tapes, I'm seeing the photographs, and I just don't think Zimmerman murdered Trayvon Martin. I'm not going to press charges. Well, that would be likewise a valid use of prosecutorial discretion, and I think in a lot of people's opinion, that's what should have happened. They should have used prosecutorial discretion in that single case, right? So I would actually support Warren's decision that, I'm not going to prosecute these people. I don't think that's something you could be suspended on. But if you're going to make a statement that I'm going to refuse to enforce this law in general, I'm going to refuse to prosecute women who get abortions or doctors who provide abortions or doctors who cut off children's genitals. I'm not going to enforce those laws because I don't think they're valid. That is not prosecutorial discretion. That is actually nullifying the law in your district or circuit or county. But it was Warren's foray into the country's political divide over transgender and abortion care that sparked Thursday's action from Desantis. Warren last year joined dozens of local and state prosecutors who signed onto a letter authored by the progressive organization Fair and Just Prosecution denouncing laws that criminalize doctors that provide gender-affirming care for transgender people. After the U.S. Supreme Court voted to overturn Roe v. Wade and eliminate constitutional protections for abortion, Warren signed another letter from Fair and Just Prosecution. I think that's a typo, a rare typo in CNN, to be fair. Promising to use discretion not to use limited criminal legal system resources to prosecute those who seek, provide, or support abortions. The position on abortion put Warren at odds with a new state law that bans abortion in Florida after 15 weeks. Desantis, who last year signed a ban on transgender girls and women participating in scholastic sports as a female, has also taken steps to ban gender-affirming care for children, which he called on Thursday literally chopping off the private parts of young kids. Oh my God. Same wavelength. Those are really, I think, egregious. And again, it's beyond just exercising discretion, Desantis said. Desantis has used his power to remove certain elected officials more than his predecessors. I love it. I love the loaded language. So, in effect, you are saying Florida governors have removed elected officials. This is not unprecedented tyranny raining down in Florida. This is something that happens. In one of his first actions as governor, Desantis suspended Broward County Sheriff Scott Israel, who oversaw the police response to the deadly mass shooting at a Parkland high school. But past suspensions were a result of actions already taken by elected officials. Warren's suspension is in part for actions yet to be taken. Notably, the state's new abortion law is facing a legal challenge, and one judge said it violated the state's constitutional, though a higher court... Okay, this is just sloppy. There are multiple typos in here, as a matter of fact. Violated the state's constitution, though a higher court said otherwise. Warren said he had not read DeSantis' executive order, but he said he heard it contains a lot of conjecture and lies. Just based on the governor's track record with unconstitutional orders, Warren said, I have a feeling that this is going to be just as unconstitutional. In other words, this guy didn't even read the executive order. Doesn't even know why he's suspended, and he's going on CNN. What was that show he was on? CNN's Laura Coates Thursday evening. He's quoted in this article, and he didn't even read the order suspending him? Come on, man. Come on. That's just emblematic of your failures as the prosecutor, the chief prosecutor. My God. Oh. Anyway, what a beautiful article. Let it rain. Anthony Sepulveda. Hail from the Bronx. Hail from Orlando, my man. Yeah. I had a hearing that day, Anthony. It was on the Zoom machine, and I couldn't find a place in New York City to set up for... Yeah, it couldn't be done, man. Let's see. Ulfric Durensen. Howdy, Augustus. Glad to see you're back after your hiatus. Yep, back after summer vacation, which is what I'm calling it. As a matter of fact, I finally got COVID. Believe it or not. Dodged COVID for a solid 2.5 years, and just out of the blue, descended upon the entire family. Took me completely out, wrecked the entire month of July. We are back. Christopher is saying, speaking of Protestantism and Catholicism, you should read De Maistre, absolutely brilliant philosopher and Catholic theologian. De Maistre is the one who said, every people gets the government it deserves. I've quoted him a lot on that. But not anymore, because we're not political now. I will let you live. Yeah, well, yeah, I'll be there. I'll be there, Anthony. Don't you worry, man. I got to go up there this month or next, so I will be dropping in, buddy. Now, there's so much going on with this. Oh, we've only got 15 minutes left. Come on. Come on. I wanted to read this whole thing about everybody flipping out about Desantis. Charlie Crist, our former governor, Nikki Fried, running for governor right now. Oh my goodness. Charlie Crist is running for governor again. Gotta be kidding me. Not that I care. Fried called DeSantis autocrat, threat to democracy over state attorney move. God, I love it. The two leading Democratic contenders in the Florida governor's race held events in Tampa to denounce Governor Ron DeSantis following his removal of Hillsborough County State Attorney Andrew Warren. Wouldn't that be just incredible if the civil war in this country broke out because women were denied the right to murder their children? If that's the thing that causes everybody to really go at it, I mean, how biblical. That's like fire raining down on Sodom and Gomorrah. That'd be incredible. The entire country falls apart and starts actually going after each other. The entire system breaks down because these women want to murder their children. Just it can't be. There's no way. But look at how things are falling apart. These people are actually saying that state attorneys should be allowed to just not enforce the laws, that the laws of democratically elected legislatures should be overthrown by whoever doesn't want to enforce them, that the Supreme Court is now the symbol of tyranny because they said, let's give this back to the states so that they can vote on these things because we should never have had that power. Just what amazing, fun times we're living in. Both U.S. Representative Charlie Crist and Agriculture Commissioner Nikki Fried positioned DeSantis' ousting of Warren, a Democrat and outspoken critic of DeSantis' policies, as an overreach of power. DeSantis' executive order, released Thursday morning, alleged Warren had effectively neglected his duties when he signed onto letters pledging not to enforce laws banning gender-affirming care for transgender kids or limits on abortion. On Thursday afternoon, blah, 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 blah. We already did that. After Warren wrapped up, however, Crist began his own news conference out of the same room. There, Crist, a Democratic candidate for governor and a former Republican governor of Florida, that's another story we can talk about sometime, Crist slammed DeSantis, calling him an autocrat that would love to be the dictator of Florida and then America. Oh no, please don't do that. Crist, who also previously served as the Florida Attorney General, said prosecutorial discretion is necessary for state attorneys with limited resources to determine what they're going to prioritize. In a large state like Florida, the interests and issues of one district won't mirror another, he said. Amazing. Amazing commentary. What they are whittling this down to, Warren did this, the media did this, Crist is doing this. Well, we have limited resources. The fair and just something that they signed these petitions for. Fair and just prosecution is like the NGO, the non-governmental organization that all of this is centered around, right? They're saying, well, these state attorneys, these prosecutors, they have limited resources. They can't prosecute all these crimes, right? Like you've got to make priorities in your office. You got to decide what must be prosecuted and what can we just not get around to? What can we not allocate resources to? And, it's really Warren's decision whether he wants to allocate these resources to prosecuting abortion doctors or doctors who cut off kids' genitals. Like, that's prosecutorial discretion. Okay. If that were a real thing, okay, wonderful. But that is the most disingenuous thing I've ever heard in my life. Let's talk about red light cameras. Let's talk about speed traps. Let's talk about petty theft. Let's talk about prostitution. Let's talk about hate crimes, hate speech. Let's talk about cyberbullying. Let's talk about let's talk about seatbelt laws, right? Seatbelt laws. Cops setting up in either residential neighborhoods, hiding behind bushes, or as I've seen in downtown Kissimmee, hiding behind cars to jump out onto Main Street and stop a car because he's not wearing a seatbelt. You've got plenty of police resources and prosecutorial resources to prosecute those cases, but not the ones that you find politically distasteful. It's a garbage argument. Oh, we have such limited resources. The heck you have limited resources. Your law enforcement is getting military-grade weaponry from the Pentagon. Don't tell me you have limited resources. You have more money than God. The budget of the state attorney compared to the public defender's office, you've got to be kidding me. You have entire police forces as your investigators. Get out of town with this. We have limited resources. We can't prosecute doctors cutting off kids' genitals. The most disingenuous just lie. Then again, Christ is a politician. One who flip-flopped from Republican to Democrat. So, not that I care about either party, but Christ's character is very well known in Florida. We'll put it that way. He said Desantis, a lawyer who attended Harvard and Yale University, should know better. It shows you Christ's own insecurities about his own education as a lawyer, right? DeSantis is a Navy SEAL who attended Harvard and Yale. I see that, I'm like, man, where did I go wrong with my life? Although I know all the places I went wrong with my life. Christ might not, however. A lawyer who attended Harvard and Yale University should know better. Chris said the fact that Warren was reelected shows that he's popular with the district and that voters chose not to remove him when they had the opportunity. You know who else was reelected? George W. Bush. Nixon, he was reelected. How popular are they, Charlie Crist? The definition, what was that? DOMA, defining definition of marriage act, something like that. DOMA was about marriage is one man, one woman. Remember that? That was George W. Bush era. He was elected twice. How does that argument hold up, Charlie? DeSantis' order argued that Warren's pledges represented a blanket refusal to follow the law, citing state Supreme Court precedent that holds prosecutorial discretion must be exercised on a case-by-case basis. Warren had not yet actually declined to prosecute any cases related to Florida's 15-week abortion ban, and the state currently has no law requiring criminal punishment of doctors or families providing gender-confirming care. On Twitter, Christ fundraised off the event. Amazing. Who could have seen that coming, Christ? Asking followers to chip in $10 to, quote, show Ron DeSantis that the people of Florida will not co-sign his authoritarian tactics, end quote. Man, to think that Charlie Crist could be our governor again. Thank God. Thank God. Freed. DeSantis is a threat to democracy. Speaking in front of the Hillsborough County Courthouse Friday morning, where protesters had rallied against Warren's removal the night before, Freed said the power to remove Warren belonged to Hillsborough County voters and not Desantis. It is not up to the governor to remove elected officials because he does not agree with their philosophies, Freed said. This is a local issue that needed to have stayed local. We'll see how Freed feels about that if she becomes governor. When conservative or Republican state attorneys decide they're not going to enforce the garbage laws that come out of her progressive administration. We'll see how this stands up then. It's not up to Governor Nikki Freed to remove elected officials because she does not agree with their political philosophies. We'll see if that statement comes back to haunt her when she's governor. Freed likened the governor's move to the actions of a dictator, calling DeSantis the greatest threat to democracy in the entire country. Okay, now I support him. She contended Warren was using his prosecutorial discretion lawfully to protect the rights of Hillsborough County residents, unless they're unborn, in which case they're not really residents, are they? They're just, what is it, a clump of cells? Is that what they call it? Casting abortion as a central issue in the governor's race, Freed alluded to the Kansas referendum, in which voters struck down a proposed constitutional amendment that would have removed the right to abortion in the state. Freed said she'd exchanged messages with Warren since the ousting. Yeah, I'll bet she has. Well, going from agricultural commissioner to governor is going to be a huge jump. But we'll see what happens. No comment on that. Then we've got the Justice Department suing the state of Idaho over its near total abortion ban. Can't read that, though, because we got 5 minutes. And we got Business Insider. Republicans' next big play is to scare the heck out of Washington by rewriting the Constitution. And they're willing to play the long game to win. Yes, that's the entire headline. That's Business Insider. And I really want to talk about this, but unfortunately, we've run out of time. So, good afternoon from the west, says Brian. Good afternoon from the east. So, that will conclude our program for today. Please check in with us next week. Sign up for the newsletter. I'm sure it's out there somewhere. You probably find it on Twitter. Look in the description. We got all the links and things like that. Subscribe and buy our t-shirts. And we will see you all next week. Till then.